This is Anna with Scrapping, Stamping, and Stuff, back with a pretty simple card today. This is a very clean and simple card using a couple of techniques. So I'll show you how to make it. We're going to use the Timeless Tropical Stamp Set, which is a really nice one. I love the greetings in here and the fonts. I really like this scripty font, but it has really nice greetings. So that's what we're going to use with these lovely palm trees. This just makes me want to escape to somewhere besides here. So I thought it was a nice, I really like those palm trees, and I thought they would be really pretty embossed. So I'm going to show you two techniques today. The one is I sponged this area in the background, and then we're going to do some heat embossing. It's been a little while since I've done any heat embossing, so wanted to show you that. If any of you have not done heat embossing before, I really encourage you to try it because it really adds a lot to your cards. So I've got my card base here in my thick Whisper White cardstock. I have a piece of, this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, just scrap cardstock, and I used our Layering Squares dies to cut a square out of the very center of that. And now this is going to be our mask to do the sponging for that background. So I am going to use some washi tape, use some kind of removable tape to tape this on. If you're real careful, you can hold it down and not let it move, but it's a little better if you can tape it down. I've got crumb cake ink and my sponge. And I'm just going to apply this using a swirling motion until I like how it looks. I do recommend when you are sponging to blot off your sponge before you put it on the part you are wanting to sponge. It gets off the excess ink so that hopefully you don't end up with splotches. So when you're sponging, you can press a little harder if you're trying to get it darker. And that spot, how much pressure you use really can help to fill in the spots that you want to be darker. So I think that looks good. When I did this the first time, I was surprised. It looked darker once I took my mask off. So I'm assuming it's going to do that again. And I would agree. So there's our background. Now, before we move on to the heat embossing part, we really want to make sure that this is all dry. So you can use a heat tool to dry it if you like, or you can just wait a few minutes. Here I've got one I did a little while ago, so it should be prepared and dry. Here are my two stamps I'm going to use, the palm trees and the thank you. And we are going to use Versamark ink for this. If you haven't used Versamark ink before, it's really nice ink. You can use it for a lot of different things, and it is clear. As you can see here, my pad has gotten stained when I had ink on a stamp and got it into here, but it will still stamp clear. Now, before you emboss, I'll explain. So we're going to stamp with this, then we are going to sprinkle embossing powder over the top. After that embossing powder is stuck on to the stamped area, then we heat it up with the heat tool, and that essentially melts the powder and will heat set it so that it's permanent. So we have to make sure that we don't get extra powder stuck to areas we don't want it. And the best way to do that is to use an embossing buddy to just run it over the area, run it over the whole area you're going to stamp on, and that will help to make sure that extra powder does not stick in places we don't want it. So now I'm just going to ink up my palm tree stamp, and I'll stamp once over it this way, and once. If I move that, I can see where it's stamped, so once over this way. And I'll go ahead and stamp the thank you right now too, and then we can emboss this all at one time. So I'm going to bring in some scrap paper to catch the excess powder. This is our copper embossing powder. I love the metallics. So you sprinkle it over there. You're going to shake off the excess. I didn't get enough over here on this edge. I did that on purpose so that I could show you that you can go back over it again. Not really. And then if you can see, there's still some powder stuck here. You want to get rid of that. So I like to give it a gentle flick first. If a gentle flick does not get off the extra powder, then you can try a more sturdy flick. If you have powder in places that you don't want it up close to your stamped images, you can use a dry paintbrush to kind of just brush off that powder. But you don't want extra powder. Once you heat it up, it is going to be permanent and stay there forever. So you can put your extra embossing powder back in the container. This stuff lasts forever. I have been using the same container of this for probably 6 years of stamping, I think. So now I'm going to show you the difference up close. See, this one is gleaming and this one is just still powdery and not shiny. So we're going to heat it up with our heat tool. Turn this onto the high setting, and I'm going to let it heat up for a minute before I put it to the paper. Sometimes you can get warping in your paper. I don't really have a problem with it often, but it is kind of a good idea to let it heat up for a minute. So I'll do that, and then I will show you up close, just going across this and watching as it kind of melts. It's kind of like if you could watch frost form on your window. That's a little bit like what this is when it melts. So I know that took a minute to show you. I wanted to show you the whole process because for beginners who are trying this, I think a lot of times they don't realize that they don't wait long enough until you see the transition. So I wanted you to see that whole thing. As you can see, this only took a couple of minutes, and it's a really pretty and special card that you could send to make somebody's day better. So I hope you enjoyed this. And let me know if you have ideas for future card ideas and videos. Have a great day, everybody.